Now we're delighted to be joined on the line by Sinn Féin TD Violet and Wynne. Violet, thanks very much for joining us on the Clare Echo.
No problem at all, Parg. Thank you very much for having me.
We'll begin by going back a small bit, Violet, and you, of course, were the surprise of the election in County Clare. How has life been as a TD for you so far?
It's been very interesting, a huge learning curve for me, and still is, I suppose. And with the COVID emergency as well, it's been difficult. It's been frustrating, I suppose. Yeah, it's just been very, very different, I suppose, totally different atmosphere. And then having to work from home as well has been an added, I suppose, hardship in itself, when you've got 5 small kids trying to, manage and navigate through this health crisis and no school and all this kind of stuff. It's uncharted waters for the children, I suppose. So yeah, it does make everything that little bit more difficult.
And just managing, Violet, in terms of your work as a TD, and obviously with the 5 kids, because all the TDs we've spoken to do have kids as well, and they were finding that they were maybe having a bit more time with them that they ordinarily wouldn't have if they were up in Leinster House.
Yes, that's true. Yes, you have all those extra times of being, asked questions, and why is the world round kind of a situation, I suppose. So a lot of interesting conversations with my children that I definitely wouldn't have been able to engage in being up in the Dáil. So you're right there, Paul. That's been an added bonus, I suppose, in that sense.
And one of the, I suppose, more interesting conversations then that took place online while this pandemic was going on, Violet, and of course, was the well-known at this stage, the Facebook exchange that you were involved in with a couple of constituents. Just could you tell us what was going through your head maybe at the time when you were pressing send on those responses?
Well, I suppose I had an awful lot of people get in touch with me, and they were very concerned, relaying a lot of fears, a lot of anxieties about the delays in testing, and maybe also the uncertainty around numbers, where these numbers were coming from exactly. And I suppose I felt that was a legitimate concern to be raised, and I wanted it on public record. But I suppose I felt I was getting maybe targeted by certain comments, maybe saying that I was, doing things that I wasn't, like trying to, I suppose, undermine the good work that is being done during the crisis. And I just felt that, this was directing the conversation in a way that I hadn't foreseen, I hadn't intended. And I suppose I felt a lot of comments were coming towards myself as well. I mean, there was 1 or 2 that said I was sitting on my hands, and that was frustrating for me, because when you're at home with 5 kids and you're trying to get back to constituents, and which is exactly what I am doing. I'm working every day, sometimes not finishing till very late at night, trying to get back to people and stuff. So I suppose, I apologise for my remarks, and I don't want to rehearse them at all in any way. I think I may have just lost my cool.
Yeah, and I understand obviously your concerns with regard to the testing, and that was your initial focus. But then to digress, and the name calling, like calling Pat Breen and Timmy Dooley as Timmy do nothing, like that was uncalled for, really, in a way, was what a lot of people have said.
And absolutely, they were right, and that's why I suppose I apologise. I do regret those comments. They're not in any way the way I want to continue my career in politics, and it won't be something that I will be looking to do again by any standards.
And then, Violet, just on that again, a couple of people that were offended by the comments that engaged with you had said they felt your apology didn't go far enough. So what would your response be to them?
I suppose, I did apologise, and I do regret my comments, and they won't be something that I will be rehearsing in any way in the future. So I suppose take maybe reassurance in that sense that, it's not something that I do agree with in any way at all, and it's not something that I will be repeating. I do want to just mention that some comments did come from maybe Fianna Fáil supporters who it does seem as if maybe they are frustrated themselves that Rita didn't get her seat, that Timmy didn't take his seat. And also, there are supporters out there, I'm very mindful, that are possibly angry that Pat Breen didn't get to retain his seat. And I suppose maybe they feel they can direct that towards myself, but I'm in no way responsible for those who lost their seats.
Yeah. And would you say, Violet, then that there's, say, articles that you're involved in, would be it interviews with Clare FM or the likes of ourselves at the Clare Echo, once they go online, do you feel that people jump on it then and try to target you?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, it definitely feels like that in some posts in particular. I do feel like I have been targeted, and maybe misdirected anger has come my way. Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And then on the flip side, one person got in touch with us following on that from that exchange, and he had voted for you. I think he was a first time voter, and he said, I didn't know what I was voting for, and because of her comments, I won't be voting for Violet and Wynne again. So because of it, you have to go back and try win back supporters. So what would you be doing to try get those people back on side?
Well, I have no doubt that the work that I will be doing in this next foreseeable future will stand to me. I have every faith in that. And I suppose going back to the election campaign, I did ask the people of Clare to put their faith in me. So I suppose what I would say now is just to not let that waver at all. I can make mistakes, and I will put my hands up and I will apologise when I do, and I have done so. So maybe just to continue that faith in me and let the work dictate people's judgment on my character and my professionalism from here on in.
With regard to your online activity then, Violet Ann, has there been a directive issued from the Sinn Féin press office or, the leaders, Mary Lou MacDonald or high-ranking officials to advise you not to be engaging in such conduct going forward?
Well, I suppose, you know, name calling is not something that would be seen as the right course of action, absolutely not. So, just to be mindful that you are a public representative and that you do represent all people in the county, and to just, to be able to be a bit more tough skinned, I suppose. Yeah.
But has there been a directive issued that, that type of behaviour isn't befitting of a Sinn Féin TD?
Well, we have a code of conduct for social media behaviour, and that has been circulated, numerous times, I suppose, just to keep us mindful, I suppose, as to what the guidelines are, and to try and stick to them as much as possible, because I suppose social media can feel like a different world to reality sometimes, and that's just something that we do need to be aware of at all times going forward. Yeah.
And were you issued with a reminder, just post in the immediate aftermath of those comments to remind you of the guidelines, or was there a phone call, or what way did it work?
Well, I suppose, yeah, it did come to their attention, the comments that were mentioned, and they did want to touch base with me just to see how I was getting on and what was happening for me. They are very mindful that we are all different, dealing with difficult circumstances, and this is difficult for everybody, for mental health, for just even feeling security and uncertainty as to what's coming next, I suppose, as well. So we are navigating through a difficult time. So I think they were mindful of that for myself in particular. Yeah.
And moving on then, Violet Ann, of course, the Sinn Féin party leader, Mary Lou MacDonald, tested positive and has now recovered. Have you been speaking to her since she's recovered from COVID-19?
Well, we have had a meeting, so we have been briefed on where we are with party business, I suppose. So I have spoken to her and with her, and she is doing extremely well now since the whole ordeal that she went through. I suppose it was pretty difficult for her. I believe she had problems with her right lung, with pleurisy, and at one weekend in particular, it got very difficult, I suppose, for her. But she's doing much better now. She's back to her full self, and raring to go.
Okay. And Violet, just reflecting on the election a small bit, in your opinion, would you say with Sinn Féin winning the most of the popular vote, 24.5% in total, would you say it was more a vote for Mary Lou MacDonald to become Taoiseach as opposed to people voting for Sinn Féin?
I believe, well, I suppose if you take in the general election result as a whole, we did see other parties, uh, take more seats in the Dáil. So the Social Democrats increased, the Greens increased as well. So I think if you were to take all that into account, it was definitely a vote for change. It was definitely a vote for Sinn Féin, and what you're saying there as Mary Lou for Taoiseach. But I think more importantly, what it screamed from people's preferences, especially of who they gave their first preference to, it was a vote for delivery, for change, for a fair recovery for workers and families, and to give them a break, I suppose. So I think our message really translated to people. They understood what we were about. They understood what we wanted to do, and change in direction of policies, I suppose, would have been the biggest seller for Sinn Féin, and that's exactly what people wanted. So I believe that's what the general election showed.
And now we have Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil coming out, and they're kind of saying with the framework for government that they've said this, they have now said that the framework that they've put together is the change that people voted for. So what would your response be to that? I'm guessing you wouldn't agree.
Absolutely not. We've had a look at the document and we don't see any real figures. Like, there's no specifics with targets to do with housing, or health, or climate action. So there's an awful lot of areas where they allude to maybe taking positive changes. But I mean, as for progressive taxation, for example, I mean, they have categorically said that they are not interested, absolutely, and they're going to stick exactly with the European fiscal rules, and stability and growth pact. And that's something that we have been calling for numerous reforms to be made, because that hardwires austerity into society, especially at times of crisis. So it's literally just a document that depicts the past. It doesn't provide a new future or a new way of recovery. So I think it's just the same again, more of the same, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're trying to hoodwink the public into believing that this is going to create change, this is going to be the right course of action for us going forward, but it absolutely isn't.
And some of the analysis from the framework would have said there was aspects to it that was a come and get me to the Green Party. There was a bit that would have enticed Social Democrats, another bit for the Labour Party, but strikingly there was nothing for Sinn Féin. So why do you think you were left out in the cold?
Well, I suppose, I mean, we've been left out in the cold from the beginning. Both parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, have said that they don't even want to engage in talks with Sinn Féin. So, I mean, that just feels exactly how it has always felt, politics of exclusion, to be honest. I mean, we have said before the election, during the election, and after the election that we would be open to talk with any political party in moving forward in terms of government formation. So yeah, it's just pretty much like the framework. Therefore, it's just more of the same, to be honest.
Okay. And just in the lead up to the election, Violet Ann, one of the big talking points that emerged following a story by Dan Danaher in the Clare Champion was that you had built up rent arrears of 12,000 or €12,000, I think, over a few years. So has that rent been repaid at this stage?
Well, I have got in touch with a solicitor. I didn't have one beforehand, so the situation is with himself now, and I'm getting advice from himself as to how I proceed, because I have every intention of paying what is owed, that exact figure. So that is going to be dealt with now in the immediate future. So I will have more answers on that in the next, I suppose, I'm going to take a guess in the next 2-3 weeks as to what way it's going to actually pan out.
And are those figures correct that were reported there that I mentioned? Are they the correct figures of the exact amount that's owed?
I would say so, yes, yeah.
Okay. And just in terms of repaying, without getting into too much detail, because obviously, as you said, it is with a solicitor, but do you intend that it's going to be Rural Resettlement Ireland that is going to get repaid the money that you owe?
Well, as far as I know, like the rural resettlement Ireland is not in existence at the moment. I know Jim Connolly himself has requested that I actually donate the money to a charity in West Clare. So from hearing his response, actually, I was going to do exactly that and maybe pick two or three charities in West Clare and try split the money between them, I suppose. But as I was saying to you, because it's with a solicitor at the moment, I can't foresee exactly who's going to get the money or where it's going to go. So that process will have to be navigated as well. And I can come back to you, Corey, at a later date with more confirmation if that's something that you're interested in.
And
Absolutely.
have you spoken with Jim Connolly at all, Violet Ann, or is this just you hearing reports of his comments?
Yeah, well, I suppose I haven't had any form of conversation with Jim Connolly himself. I just seen that when Dan Danaher did do the news piece, he followed up with another article, and in that he had engaged in length with Jim Connolly, and he relayed an awful lot of his opinion and everything else. So it was from that article that I discovered that was what he had proposed and what he maybe wanted going forward. So yeah.
Just to clarify on it before we move on, you are hopeful that the matter will be dealt with and the payment will be given to whether it's a charity or an organisation within. Do you have a rough time frame on when you hope that will be done?
I don't. What I'm hoping for is in the next 2 to 3 weeks that the confirmation will be there in place as to what way it's going to proceed, because there's a few technicalities that I wasn't aware of. For instance, it would have to be paid in one lump sum maybe. So I mean, I don't get paid an annual payment off Leinster House. It's an installment. So that's something that has to be looked into as well, and how that can be done as quickly as possible, because for my sake, for my solicitor's sake, for Jim Connolly's sake, this is not something that we want to see dragging on for 2 to 3 years or anything to that effect at all. So I mean, it'll always be done with with the idea that this will be wound up as quickly as possible, just to put any negativity at bay, and so as that we can move forward with positivity. Yeah.
And the example set by having such a rent arrears, Violet, are you worried that it sets now as a national TD that it sets a bad example? Because if such situations were to develop in Clare, the line someone could trot out is, sure, why do I have to pay my rent when one of our TDs didn't for a period of 3 years?
Well, I think the focus that it has received, the story in particular, throughout the election campaign, and how long that has extended on for, I don't think that would have given people the impression or the idea that this is a route that they would like to go down. I don't think anybody would want to have something like this hanging over their heads, or to be out there in the public to be discussed, without you being able to defend yourself as well. I suppose that's another thing. But no, I suppose I'm very mindful that I represent change, so I'm not a conventional politician as such. I'm not the typical politician, and I just don't think my career is going to follow the normal route, let's say, anyway. So I think that this just adds testament to that that I come from a different background. I am not the usual pristine suit wearing politician, and I come from a social welfare background where it was a real struggle in so many other ways. And while it may be being discussed in a negative way, I think as well it shows that I'm a real person who went through real hardship, like we all do. And yeah, I think that's what has come from the whole ordeal, I suppose.
Okay. And Violet, like, just to go on to the election itself, the vote, the way it materialised, like a lot of people I've spoken to since have said they might have voted for Violet Ann, but they didn't know you at all. And so it's just about now that they're beginning to know you, and maybe stories like this, how do you keep those people on side that you had, and to maintain that level of support? I know you said you're hopeful the work you do, but are there other stories that could come out that you'd be fearful could damage, your reputation and your standing as a politician?
Well, you see, I suppose just what you saying that, Corey, it was said an awful lot during the election campaign, and even at the count, that I was in effect an unknown person standing, a candidate, I suppose. But I think that became a rhetoric. I think that ignored the fact that I was an area representative from West Clare for a year. It ignored the fact that I actually ran in the local elections for West Clare in 2019. So I wasn't really, not for everyone in the county was I a complete unknown. I had been doing work, I had been working with people, I had been able to get great results as well for a lot of people, considering I wasn't an elected representative. So for those people that felt that they didn't know me, I suppose, just be mindful of the fact that, I have gotten here. So even though this story has come out, I did it came out in the general elections, and I don't believe that there's anything else there to come out that could be misinterpreted or turned in a way to make me look like a bad person or anything to that effect. No.
Yeah, and just though on Kilrush, like you topped a lot of polls across the county. In Kilrush, where you live in, you didn't top the poll. So did that come as a surprise to you?
Not it really. I mean, I suppose a lot of people would have said the West would have been the hardest area to break through with Sinn Féin because of its roots in Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil. I mean, it's known as a stronghold, I suppose, as some would say. And I suppose the results that I received in the local elections in West Clare wasn't a significant result, even though Sinn Féin didn't do well across the board when it came to the local elections. So, I mean, it's not a shock to me or anything to that effect. I suppose I just feel that the West is such a massive area as well. There's an awful lot of rural people in this area, and being able to access them and to get to them with a small team, with only 3 weeks of a general election campaign as well. I mean, I felt at a loss, basically, I suppose, with being able to reach to them people. So I suppose that could be just a reflection of that.
Okay. And Violet, obviously, you're a TD now, and we've Councillor Donna McGettigan and Shannon. So Sinn Féin is in a very strong position, or has the potential to build in County Clare, should I say. But just to go on to your comments that were portrayed, the Northwest Clare branch of Sinn Féin was among those to come out and criticise you, and it has been documented in sections that there isn't as much unity within Sinn Féin in Clare as there could be with individual spats going on. So what would you do now as the TD to try bring that bit of unity within Sinn Féin and Clare?
Well, I mean, I can't really speak on their feelings of not there not being unity, or whatever their comments are as to being upset or disgruntled maybe. All I can say is that for me, I'm about bringing everyone together as much as possible, about people working in groups and in teams, about using our strengths and our weaknesses to our advantage, and creating, I suppose for me specifically, it's about creating that camaraderie attitude and feeling. So, I mean, that's the way I'm going to move forward, the way I always am. I try to be as friendly and as open to anybody and everybody, and that's the way I'm going to continue, and hope that spreads.
And just to change that feeling of being the bottom of the pecking order, by then, what can you do as an opposition TD to change that, like, as opposed to just highlighting the problems? What actions can you do to deliver results?
Well, first and foremost, not give up. I suppose that's been the message that people have relayed to me. They may have had TDs come down and meet them, have conversations with them, even agree with whatever grievance that they have or whatever that they're looking for. They know the steps to be able to give them the information and maybe even support applications, and then it kind of ends there. So when there's real fighting that has to go on, when there's calls for supports for certain companies in Clare, sometimes it's just dropped and it's let go, and then all of a sudden it becomes one of those things that sure nothing happened and such didn't follow up on it or didn't actually do anything in the end. It was a great conversation, but it didn't transpire into anything. So I suppose that's the one thing that I will bring, is that I'm not only going to be engaging with people and getting the real information from the real people and relaying their real issues to the relevant departments and ministers that it needs to go to, but also not letting up on that pressure and keeping it there, that Clare is not going to go away. We're not going to, stand for this anymore. I mean, I went to a council briefing and I discovered that Clare is a bit of an anomaly for when it comes to the local property tax, and helping other counties and money going up to central government to be able to alleviate other counties. And I just felt, and a lot of people actually said this to me during the general election campaign, because they were aware that absolutely was unacceptable, considering how much investment Clare has received over the years. So I mean, that's what I intend to bring.
Could you just explain how Clare is an anomaly in local property tax?
Okay, so how they explained it to me was that we're the only county other than, I think, Limerick, that contributes to central government. We send up, I think, 2 million at least, but I think last year was a bit more than that, to contribute to other counties that maybe wouldn't have such a high uptake or intake of property tax. So yeah, they use some of our property tax intake and share it out.
So going from the West Clare area organiser for Sinn Féin to becoming a TD, Violet Ann, what did you have to do to, I suppose, be briefed that this is now what's required of you as a TD, the big jump that was there?
I suppose I just have to learn as much as possible and as quickly as possible. I mean, I'm inundated with information and briefings from, even from organisations just trying to let me know how they're getting on this year. The COVID experience, I suppose, and it's still not over yet, is a huge different, I suppose, route for a lot of companies and organisations, and their futures are not so secure or set, I suppose. So there's an awful lot of information and education, really, I suppose, as well as that. I have to educate myself in an awful lot of areas of legislation and learn how to navigate through the system. I suppose it's been difficult in that sense, that where I've been up in Leinster House and I've been shown maybe, or I've been talked through how the system works, but then we haven't been able to engage in that system because of COVID-19. So then that became a whole different learning curve then as well, just trying to learn all the new measures that were being introduced, and also trying to navigate people through that system too, because unfortunately I don't think that an awful lot of information was given. Maybe I suppose it was a hard, difficult time, and they were trying to navigate through the system, but a lot of people were finding it very confusing to find out whether or not they were entitled to certain payments and stuff like that. Yeah.
There, Violet, just during the pandemic, is there anything in particular that you've begun to appreciate a bit more? Is there anything, having to go through this global emergency, is there anything now that you're appreciating? It might be the role of volunteers or community groups.
Oh, absolutely, yes. I think it's highlighted an awful lot. For example, I suppose the fact that nurses were on the picket line so much in 2019, and here they are being the heroes of this emergency, and not just them, but also retail staff as well, and also the hospitality sector as well, being so hugely important. And I suppose appreciated as well to a level like never before, for the job and the service that they provide. I suppose it does make you as well appreciate your own health at times like this, and the health and well-being of your family members, I suppose, too. Something we would take for granted an awful lot on a daily basis. I suppose through this experience on a daily basis, you are looking at your children and you're monitoring their health quite vividly and closely, but you are appreciating every day that they are doing okay and that they haven't shown any signs or symptoms of the COVID-19. Yeah.
And within Kilrush Violet, where you're based, what's the response been of the community like there? Have you been involved with organisations that are helping the most vulnerable?
I have been trying to navigate through trying to get offices, laptop supplies, trying to create a bit of an office space in my home, and trying to get all of the equipment that I need, and trying to get back to people as much as possible. I mean, you have Facebook Messenger, you have your TD Messenger page, you have WhatsApp now that people can contact you on, you have, phone calls coming in, you have then emails. So there's been loads of avenues for people to get in touch with me, and I'm so thankful they actually have. I suppose they're seeing advertisements put out there as to what my contact details are, and it is getting out there. I'm getting it from all different parts of Clare, not just where I'm living here in Kilrush. I've had a few knocks at the door as well. So I'm happy with that too. People do feel like they can approach me even at my home door. And yeah, I have engaged with as many and as much community organisations as I possibly could. I have given my contact details to the Kilrush community response, and I'm just waiting to hear back from them as to when they actually need me. I've made myself available in my messages to them that I'd pretty much be able to give a dig out. I am interested in that as well. I suppose nursing homes has been a bit of a factor at the moment with PPE equipment, so that's been something I've been trying to work on in the background, trying to just get them in touch with the right relevant people who have PPE equipment, and that has worked out, so I'm pleased to say that. So yeah, it's been very busy, extremely busy, but I have to say housing is still one of the most prominent issues. Nearly every second call or query that I get is in relation to housing, and it's not necessarily people who are uncomfortable where they're living. It's more to do with the fact that there are people actually couch surfing during the COVID-19, which is not good at all. And then you have people who are, cramped in with their extended family members. So there's large volumes of people in small houses as well. So it's brought a huge focus on the housing crisis, I suppose, here in Clare. I mean, I always knew it was bad, but to be getting nearly every second query to be in relation to housing and people being either on the verge of homelessness or actually homeless now at the moment, I suppose maybe hidden homeless too as well. I don't believe a lot of these people were coming forward. They were just, I suppose, making do with their circumstances. But then COVID-19 happened, and then, their own fears and anxieties increased as well. And they realized, I'm going to have to reach out here and get something solid done about my situation. This needs to change. So yeah, I've been quite overwhelmed with how bad the housing situation is here in Clare.
Those calls, Violet, just are in relation to couch surfing and homelessness. Are they county-wide, or is it particular areas that this is prevalent?
I would say county-wide, but I suppose most of my queries have come from the Ennis area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And Violet, just there mentioning the office and you're getting set up at home, just have you an update on your constituency office and when you'd hope to reopen and where that will be based?
I don't. It's become very difficult. Estate agents, they're not in their offices, excuse me, at the moment. They're at home as well, working from home. So I have one nearly confirmed, but it hasn't been able to get to that confirmation stage because of the regulations. So it has been unforeseen, I suppose. I was nearly there just before the COVID-19 came in. So that's been a huge disappointment to myself. But going forward as soon as possible, I'm actually trying to make sure that I have everything else covered, so as that when the regulations are lifted, I can go ahead with the office that I have in mind, and go through the finalisation of the process and being able to just bring everything in that I have and put it in the right place. So I'm trying my best to make sure that time is not going to be wasted in any way, shape or form.
Okay, Violet, we won't take up any more of your time. Violet and Wynne, Clare Sinn Féin TD, thanks very much for joining us on the Clare Echo.
No bother at all, Pori. Thank you again for having me.